are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NC F&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. Our featured spirit of the week is Mayberry Spirits of Mount Airy, a small batch craft distillery created with the goal to lift the spirit by making premium, unique single malt sorghum whiskeys, always promoting the values of community, sustainability, and authenticity. Check them out online at mayberryspirits.com and on social at Mayberry Spirits. Brought to you by Key City Spirits, brand ambassadors providing North Carolina distilleries with marketing, design, and social media services. KeyCitySpirits.com. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today in studio, we are talking about Carrols Kitchen in downtown Raleigh. We're going to get into the story, but it is not your average cafe. Here to discuss Carrols Kitchen with us is the executive director, Ms. Lindsay Blankenhorn.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Welcome to the stormy morning. We're here on a Monday morning. It was beautiful, and then hail dropped from the sky.
And sun is back.
And the sun is back. Welcome to North Carolina. That is
That's right.
Indicative of our weather system.
That's right.
Anyhow, so a little point of reference, Carrols Kitchen. We've been discussing a lot of social change and agriculture change and liquor reform and so many things that we're noticing that need to be adjusted and need to be maybe spent more time on, and systems are in change. This story today is going to be a lot about the human change, possibly.
Yeah.
Human improvement. This topic is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I'd love to be able to understand it a little bit deeper and how it relates to food and beverage. But with that, I think you, Lindsay, would probably be the best way to explain what Carrols Kitchen means. So how about give us a little idea of what you're doing there?
Yeah. Well, it's really fun to be here today with you today. I get to talk to people all the time about both nonprofit stuff and restaurant stuff. So it's really fun when those two things come together in this great way. So Carrols Kitchen is a grab-and-go restaurant group that employs women coming out of crisis. And so we're a nonprofit social enterprise. And we hire women who have come out of lots of hard things, homelessness, incarceration, domestic violence, things like that. And so we look to kind of give them a leg up in employment as they kind of begin to put their lives back together in ways that can look a lot of ways, but we help with employment, train that.
Yeah, and the idea being if you have a job that gives you a sense of purpose, it gives you structure, and then gives you a path to, is the right word recovery?
Well, we don't use the word recovery because that has so much meaning in our kind of social context, because that often leads to people thinking about addiction.
Yeah.
Though we do have women coming out of addiction. We sort of look at it as, so a couple things. In our employment and our employment efforts in the restaurant, we're just a restaurant. And so we can't do all the things. And so we have really kind of honed in, targeted folks who are coming out of crisis. So they're not in the thick of it. They're not really still wrestling. They're not obviously still incarcerated. We're not hiring folks that are still incarcerated. We're not hiring folks that may be in the height of some sort of really hard thing. But they've kind of put their mind to getting back together, getting their lives back together. So what we know about that, looking at cycles of poverty, is that a job is something that does create, just like you said, a good rhythm for putting those pieces back together. A job is not everything, but it is a really stable place to start.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you guys are also really working with the community, because I believe you're getting the resources of your future employees are coming from different women organizations around the triangle for the most part.
That's right. We so we were about 3 years old. We'll be open 3 years in September, which is really fun. And we have, over the last really 2 years, cultivated a network of community partners. And that's where all of our women come from. So they have to come from a community referral, which means that their network of support is larger.
Yeah.
We don't want to be their only fallback should they dip back into crisis, which is pretty common. So they come from places like Raleigh Rescue Mission and Step Up and Jobs for Life and lots of other support network organizations.
Yeah. And how are you set up as an organization? What is the training, let's say, for the leaders of Carrols Kitchen in order to, again, I'm struggling with the right politically correct term, but to put these women on the right path or in a good rhythm?
That's exactly the language we use.
Okay.
Yeah, it's exactly the language we use. So we are really still working on that. I think we're getting a lot closer. When we first started, we really didn't have much of a plan, to be honest with you. We just knew that a job would help.
Okay.
And that was a good place to start.
Okay.
What we have now is this network of agencies who basically says, we think this woman is stable enough for employment. And they send her to us. And then we start just kind of a slow dance with her in terms of we do an interview and an assessment. And that assessment looks at a lot of things in her life. So that's like, what is her job history like? What is her family scenario like? What's her engagement with the criminal justice system? So we're looking at how stable she is overall. And we have a loose grading system that we use there just to kind of figure out how stable is she?
Yeah.
How ready to work is she? Because someone who's ready to work mentally may not be ready to work physically. It can be really hard to work if you don't have transportation. It can be really hard to work if you don't have a place to live. Things like this really impact the job you do while at work. And so we do this sort of assessment, and then we do a 3-piece volunteer set, which is sort of one of my favorite things that we do. As a nonprofit, we accept volunteers all the time. And so we essentially ask everyone to volunteer with us before we employ them. And so they come for 3 different shifts, usually between 6 and 8 hour shifts. And we do that over 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And we're trying to see, how do you fit in with our culture? Do you understand our values? What's your work ethic like? What do you like when you're under stress? Kitchens are stressful and hot and fast-paced. And so we want to see all those things. And if that goes really well, we bring her into trial employment. And that's a 30-day trial where we then essentially onboard her and say, these are our mission, vision, and values. This is who we are, and this is what we want for you while you're here. But once she begins that trial employment, she then has access to our full-time program director, and that person resources her with all of the other community agencies we talked about before that help with housing and transportation and criminal justice engagement and things like that, so that we are hoping at that point we've extended her network. That not only does she have this job, but that we've given her an opportunity to go, wow, I am a little safer, and I do have more choices and options.
Yeah, it's as if the job at Carrols Kitchen is a jumping off point.
That's right. We sort of talk about it. It's a cheesy analogy, but I basically say Carrols Kitchen is the vehicle. And once they're in the car, we get to tell them whatever we want to tell them. And so once they're in the car, we're like, where do you want to go?
Yeah.
How do you want to take this? There are lots of stepping stones you can take, but we intend to resource that for them.
To take your analogy, just one question before because I want to talk about the chef there and everything.
Yeah.
What if, to use your analogy, what if the woman in question makes a right turn? Or a left turn, and goes sort of off the path. Yeah. How is that dealt with, especially if it happens like maybe during service, or have you had examples like that?
You mean like regularly? It happens all the time.
Yeah, we got to get all into that at some point. I do want to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here because you have this training or this, it's basically like you're staging, to take a culinary term, the root word of staging, the French term, but that might be, I just think of anybody trying to get a job in general, to work for free for a few audition pieces, especially for somebody that is coming away from any type of challenge. How does that, how do you, how is that simply executed?
So part of this looks like skin in the game. Part of what we do at Carrols Kitchen is offer tremendous resource just under the helm of employment, which a lot of folks aren't doing or don't really have the access to. But we ask for that volunteer time, and we're not paying them for that, but we start them at $9 an hour. And we're basically saying, it may not be right for you and it may not be right for us either, but we need to kind of see how this works. And we do that for expectation's sake, to save them. Most of them are coming without a job at all. And so anytime with some experience, everybody seems grateful for. We're grateful for extra hands. They're grateful for the time to kind of get to know us. And rarely does that volunteering turn into a weird or bad experience. Usually that turns into something good. So we haven't had a lot of folks push back on the volunteering. If they're coming out of stable employment, they're often not looking for a job at Carrols Kitchen.
Yeah.
Right, of course, yeah.
I just want to get back to the question I had asked before about
sorry.
about what happens during like a left turn during service, or somebody kind of has a episode.
Yeah, so we try really hard to use our mission and values as sort of the hinge for how we create the culture and carry out activity in the kitchen. And that's been really important for us as a staff to establish because it means that we have something to go back to. It's not just personal feelings. It's not just a quick one-off behavior or whatever that is.
There's guidelines.
There are guidelines to this, right? And so if there's, let's say, like somebody has bad attitude or they're not doing their job in the way that we've asked them to do those things, those come back to what are the values and how are you executing those right now? And so we need to be clear about what we mean here. And then we have what we call disciplinary action, which is basically like a warning. We have a warning system. But usually early on when it comes back to the values, everybody wants to be in line with values. Right? Sure. So it comes back to a value conversation, not a performance conversation.
And as far as the staff goes, I know Chef Ryan Piper is, I guess, the lead.
He is,
right? Yep. And then does he have like the regular kitchen works, like a sous chef and a chef de cuisine, or kitchen managers, or how does that work? And are those all? Can these women or also step up to management roles within the system?
Right. Great questions. This is where we're still. I would say we're in the toddler stage of these things. We're still figuring it out. We have other professional kitchen staff that are not program staff, so we distinguish between those two things. Essentially, because folks coming in from a program staff standpoint don't have to have any skill. They have to have no kitchen skill to have come in. They've got to be coming from crisis. Yeah. And professionals we need to have a higher standard for that, and they need to adhere to our values in every way. So essentially, they set the standard. So we have 4 professional staff in our kitchen right now that are not a part of the program. Our hope is that all of our women get to a level where they are hireable at a professional level. We don't have any right now in a management role, though we do have shift leads kind of thing. But that's because we haven't had a system inside the kitchen until recently that we've been moving people through. So we had a high fidelity in the beginning to hire as many as we can so that we can create as much stability as possible. And what we've learned is that we can't create as much opportunity as possible unless we know exactly what it is we're equipped to teach them. And so we now have a 6-stage training program for our women in the kitchen and then exterior to the kitchen on the program side of things. But it essentially says this is your level 1, level 2, all the way up to level 6. And graduation is a kind of at level 6. And that level 6 point is where someone would become a professional in the kitchen. And it is we have folks right now in the kitchen that we really hope in the next year move into that position. So we hope that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Max, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just in staffing, let's talk about, that's got to be an interesting aspect too, because you're talking about people that don't have skills in this industry and then coming in and now working. I mean, you're not doing, Michelin level food execution, but anything that you're doing, it requires some sort of point of reference. I just know, and many listeners out there that are in the food and beverage industry, it's really hard to staff a kitchen in general.
Right.
And also, and sadly, and we've talked about, say, going back to Blake Gottliff's episode, Under the Oak, about people that have had addiction problems or just crisis in their life in the kitchen, and these are just traditional restaurants.
Right.
Dealing with this as your framework, and then coming in with people that don't really not necessarily understand or know how to work in a kitchen, it's got to be extremely challenging to get up to just a point of service every day with so many people fluctuating through. I've got to know, how does Chef Ryan and just your team even establish day one in the kitchen?
Yeah. It's a great question. So just a little background on me. I don't have a restaurant background. And so coming into Carrols Kitchen was a really interesting learning curve for me. I had a nonprofit background and actually did sales before that. I worked in a malt shop when I was 16. That was the last time I'd worked behind the counter. And so learning how this works, what the equation is for successful business, this social enterprise part of it, was really cumbersome. We essentially were taking folks who we wanted desperately to help and saying, can't you just do the work we have in front of you, without really giving them a roadmap. And so we've really worked hard on a roadmap for success. And so we essentially, I talked a little bit about that 6 stages, and we won't go too deeply into that because we're still learning. But that of course starts where most kitchens start, in the dish pit, and that moves up to builder, and then that moves up to prep, and you kind of move those things forward as skill progresses. But our team does a really good job of balancing heart and production. And I don't mean that in a squishy way, but we have to manage all these feelings that come to work. Lots of folks are not stably housed. They may or may not be in a room for rent or in a shelter sometimes. And so getting to work, we pretty much say to them, hey, we value you and you're whole, but we need you to put away all the craziness that's in your brain for a little while because we have work to do.
Yeah, it's like a restaurant, we say, just normal for-profit restaurants,
Sure.
check your shit at the door.
Right, exactly. And so there is an element of like, you're here to work.
Yeah.
And we have strong feelings about the level at which they come to work, because we're not doing them any service by saying to them that we're any different than any other place to work. Because when they leave us, they're going to have to check their stuff at the door, right? And so so Ryan and his team have worked really hard with stations and timing and clocks and ways to hold people accountable. We have a time on every recipe card that should take for everybody to complete it, and the range in which they have. So if it takes chef 12 minutes to do something, he gives them maybe 20, and then that's it. There's a lot of accountability in the kitchen. And there's a tremendous amount of trust building. That trial period, that 30 days, is really all about, do you trust me? Because it's going to get hot in here. It's going to get fast, and it's going to get heated. We do a lot of catering, and we have 2 restaurants that we service out of 1 kitchen. So everything happens there. And so basically, everyone has a job description of what has to happen, and that changes a little bit depending on the production of the day.
It's amazing, thinking about the measure of success for a for-profit restaurant.
Right.
And you guys, even with this, because essentially you must have different parameters, because it's like, it's not only about the quality of the food or the time that the food comes out, but it's about the health of this person, and
That's right.
have they established their path or reestablished their life.
That's right.
But yet you guys still manage to be very highly thought of. Not that I'm much of a review person, but when I was telling my wife your mission
Sure.
and how it's women empowerment and all this, she started looking at the reviews, and she's like, you guys are 4.8 reviews.
Yeah, we're really proud of it.
4.8 out of 5 on Google with 85 reviews, which is an impressive number, and people
Can you
were
imagine
rating
the
it.
jerk, though, that's like, oh, this place doing a really great job for food and all that. Sandwich is a little soggy.
But I do like that, though, right?
Sure.
Like,
Right.
we're judging them on the food, because it's not like these women are looking for a handout. I mean,
right.
they're trying
That's
to be put into society and get the next job.
I'll tell you what, I think that's what makes us powerful. I really think that the way our food stands up in the market is what gives us the validity that we have, that we've had so far. Raleigh really embraced us early on because it's a great concept. It's grab and go downtown. You've got a high business market that's ready to, they want 15 minutes away from their desk to take their food back to their desk, And we've hit that market really hard and really well, and we want to be the best sandwich in town. We don't want to be a handout. We're not charity food. We're not a soup kitchen, which is a little challenging to get over. People think of, when you put the word kitchen in a nonprofit title, people automatically think you're giving food
Soup
away
kitchen,
for free. Yeah. And so in the last year, we've really tried hard to bulk up our brand to say, no, we're real food in this market, and we're doing a really good job behind the scenes also, and you should know more about that.
Actually, it's interesting. Let's get to this point of reference too. The community in Raleigh and in the Triangle, North Carolina, it's just so small and focused, within the food and beverage industry. Sarah Acosta, she works with you. She's the director of programs, and Sarah and Elliot Acosta, are huge foodies, to say
Yeah.
the least.
Yeah.
Elliot, you may know on Instagram as Eat Raleigh. And I just had an impromptu interview with him at Thrive NC recently as we were eating at the Mofu shop and talking, and he just came running up and go, "Hey, man, how's it going?" And we chatted for a quick moment. But it was great because Elliot himself is a listener of the show, but also concerned about good and bad food, I guess, good food. In the area, and it shows through that, like, Sarah, his wife, is deeply involved, and started to become, made me aware, or made Matt and I aware of what you do. I mean,
Right.
I've actually eaten at Carrols Kitchen quite a bit since now being here in downtown Raleigh at the kitchen studios. It's
Thank you.
literally around the corner, so it's a 3-minute walk over there to get something. And then obviously also at Morgan Street Food Hall, which is just down Hargate as well. So for us, I mean, it's super convenient for anyone working in the business district. So that said, let's talk about the menu. Let's talk
Great.
about what we're eating there. What can we know to expect?
So we are, we joke when we're creating our menus that we serve normivores. And what we mean by that is folks who like good, delicious, normal food. But we do sandwiches, salads, soups. And then our sort of niche in the market is Kolache. Have you guys had Kolache before Carrols Kitchen?
No, but I was reading a little bit about it.
I should have brought you some today.
Yeah.
Explain.
So Kolache are a traditional Eastern European sweet roll with a filling in the middle, typically uncovered. So it looks sort of like a Danish, like a yeast roll meets a Danish. I describe them as their yeast roll with filling. That's just like the southern term for that.
Okay.
And then we usually have between 10 and 12 different flavors. So
Oh, wow.
usually half sweet, half savory. So if you think about like donut of the day, we have like a Kolache all the time. There's just our favorites are like crumble and cream, which is like a cream cheese Danish sort of feeling. And then we have a blueberry almond cream. We had an apple butter brie for a while. We now have an apple pie. I think this is our spin right now. But spinach feta, mushroom melt, cheeseburger, things like that. Yeah, it's really fun.
I even like, because the fat boy in me, when I'm getting anything, I'm like, I'll get the wrap, and then I look over and it's yesterday's cookies for $1.
Right.
And I'll get one of these.
That's right. Yeah, we
I'm
have
being good on the wrap, so let me get the cookie.
right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have typically about 6. We're about 8 sandwiches now on the menu, and then we have maybe 6 or 8 salads. We have some wraps on there, and then we have 2 fresh soups every day. So the thing that I love to talk about, and I'm not quite the foodie the Acostas are, but I love food, and we love to get out and try all kinds of new things, is we make every sauce and dressing in-house. So there's not a thing on any of our salad, or on any of our sandwiches that we haven't made. And so it makes everything really unique. Everything tastes just like ours.
Ketchup? You're making ketchup in the house?
No, but we don't use ketchup on our sandwiches.
Okay.
Yes, we've got a meatloaf.
Yeah, man, how many
that's-
ketchups do you put on like a turkey?
Well, they said they had a hamburger.
Well, no,
So-
we have a cheeseburger Kolache.
Cheeseburger
and
Kolache,
there
okay.
is a sriracha ketchup on top.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the, because in my wife's extensive research on this one,
great.
she said that you guys do some gluten-free and some vegan options as well. And
That's
I guess
right.
people are really popular
They
talking about
are.
the, is it the steak and cheese?
BLT.
vegan- Yeah.
BLT.
But you're offering, which is great because it's like kind of forward-thinking menu
That's right.
right now about having vegetable first and vegan. I think that's just making that aware now.
That's right.
It's good for health. It's good for
That's right.
and it doesn't excuse or eliminate so many people that are eating now. I mean, just that in itself. Not that long ago, I'd say 3 years ago, when I was like deep in it in the restaurants, a vegan would come in, or even just a vegetarian, which is a pretty broad scope now. And we're like, oh, great! What can we
do we
get
serve
for them?
right?
And it's like, we'll figure out something.
Sure.
And I think the new way of looking at it is, how about we have something ready?
That's right.
And dare I say, even something on the menu
That's right.
Yeah.
in anticipation of somebody that eats that way, because that's being vegetable focused, or maybe just trying to eliminate animal products in your diet is not a fad, and it's not, and it probably should just be. It's almost like we're going back to the way people used to eat back
for sure.
when we didn't have a McDonald's on every corner, and so protein was like animal proteins were for celebrations and
That's right.
birthdays and whatever. And now
Right.
it's just like Tuesday lunch. So,
Well, and for us, we've been trying to really hone in on our market, and we do have a huge vegan and vegetarian following. And people ask us a lot of questions like, "What is this?" and "What's in the mayonnaise?" and that we use, or whatever it is that we're using for that. And so we've actually made a shift. We've got a new menu coming out. Maybe this month, it might be June, but basically saying at the bottom, if you don't see what you like, you ask us because we'll build it for you. And we haven't been saying that in the past, even though it was true. Our normal customers were getting whatever they wanted when they came in, but we're now adding that to the menu, saying like, we're here for you. Like, what do you need?
actually, you did that. You did that. I did a whole kitchen order in here in the kitchen for everybody down at Morgan Street Food Hall, and everybody was like, I want this, but I don't want that.
Right.
Can I get this? I'm like, oh my God, all right, whatever.
Welcome
so
to
when I got
restaurants.
down there, the Carrols Kitchen was completely amenable to all
Great.
of our crazy dietary needs.
Great.
And I was impressed. I was like, I really like this on this bread, but can you do it as a wrap? And maybe instead of it being a pulled pork, can you do it with the chicken and the and the pesto? Everybody just said, sure, yeah, why not?
Yeah, well,
No
the
big deal.
thing that's great, you can't say everything in like one sentence one time when you're telling what you do, but we build every sandwich fresh every day. And so if you want something right there, it's there. It's in the kitchen. It wasn't made yesterday. It wasn't made somewhere else. It's here. And so it's easy to do those things when you're creating that way. It also creates tremendous training opportunity.
Yeah.
When we've got those kinds of requests coming because real people need real things, real requests, right? So we can just say, hey, we cater to every person,
Right.
every customer, the way we cater to you. And so it's just great training.
Yeah, and I assume that a lot of that culture is established by Chef Ryan Piper. That
right.
it comes down from it. And I was wondering, how does the hiring process go for a real chef for something like this when you're looking for a non-for-profit, but culture is at the
right.
is the major priority for your restaurant? Was this something that was important to him, or was it just a normal hiring process that you found, or how did he happen to come on board?
He's going to like this part of the interview. No, it wasn't normal. I don't think it was normal. We actually had a startup chef who came with us and launched us. She was fabulous. And worked through, so she was young and working through some things. And we were really looking for someone to lead us both professionally with our women and just in their ethic, their work ethic.
Right.
Because you can't, even though we're a nonprofit, it feels like things could be a little softer and easier, and it's more rigorous.
Yeah.
Our training is more rigorous. So
You almost have to be more organized because
Right.
you have to literally, like you said, train people that have never worked in the culinary field
right.
before.
That's
Yeah.
right.
The only thing that bothers me about Ryan is that in his picture that he has on the website, he's wearing a Boston Red Sox hat.
Oof.
And we are down 2
I'm just
games.
going to let you take that up with him.
2 games to nothing with our
Bruins.
beloved Hurricanes. So when this comes out, who knows? Maybe we've already won the Stanley Cup and it all means nothing. But if it didn't go that way, Ryan, I got a bone to pick with you.
He has been a real gift actually in the kitchen. He's really culinarily talented. He is just like any other great chef. He loves the creativity of it all. He loves the process. He's also a systems guy, so like figure how do we make this the most efficient, effective way he's all about those systems. But it has been a really great thing. So he was actually one of the chefs at Highgrove Estate, which is a wedding venue in Fuquay Varina that one of my board members owns. And she basically said, you can have him on loan for a minute until you find somebody great and do some interviewing. And the more time we spent together, and really the more time he was in the kitchen, we had some reservations because of we hire only women coming out of crisis. And so having a male lead felt tricky. Not because we don't value male leads, but we wanted to make sure we
Be
created
a trust element.
That's right.
Yeah.
We wanted to create a
Comfortability
good
for the-
environment,
yeah.
right? And securing that environment felt like we had to run him through non-professional tests.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, how do you work when people lose their minds? How do you handle upset people? How do you work through this kind of thing? How confrontational are you? These were real. We had to watch those things kind of play out in the kitchen, and what Ryan really showed up with was a tremendous gift for relationship, paired with a desire to make good sandwiches. And not all chefs want to make sandwiches.
Yeah.
And so it's been one of those things that we've watched him grow in his ability to grow our staff, and create creativity within our normivore kind of menu. But he's done a really great job with that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, chefs are usually down for the cause and great pillars of the community, but this is next level,
Yeah, well, it's really fun. We've been doing just some leadership staff training and making sure we're all kind of pulling in the same direction. And I don't know, a few weeks ago, we were having lunch together as a team, which doesn't always happen when you're a restaurant. Like, lunch together is not a thing. It happens very often. And I said, how's everybody feeling? How we've just done this big mission, vision, and values. Are we all on the same page? And he just kind of looked up at me, and he just got back from having a second baby. So he had been back for
I know what that's like.
Yeah. He's got a 3-week-old. And so he looked up, and I was just, checking his temperature, trying to go like, are you cared for?
Yeah.
And he said, I really love my job. And I said, tell me more about that. And he said, I love that we're actually doing what we intend to do. And it's like, yeah, we do have this market of folks that are buying our sandwiches and salads, and not all of them know the people behind it, right? Like, that's not what they always know. But he does, and he knows why he's getting up every day. And so that's what makes him really valuable to us.
That's all well and good. But you are hiring people that are coming out of crisis or currently in crisis, and that definitely has to spawn a dark side.
Sure.
And it's got to be an emotional and sometimes tearful moments at times. I want to know something about that. But first, I do want to talk to, totally unrelated, to a company that's really important to us. That's Triangle Wine Company. They've been sponsors of the show for a little bit over a year now, and they keep expanding. They've got their 4th location in Holly Springs. They're, of course, not necessarily related to anything in specific of helping out women in crisis and all, but if you're in, if your refrigerator's empty, I guess maybe they could help you out and stock it. So it's not to make light. Come on, how do I transition?
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. So, but if you're looking for excellent wine, beer, you're even looking for a glass of beer or a glass of wine on the way home from work, they have 4 locations in Cary, Morrisville, Southern Pines, and Holly Springs. Go visit them at trianglewineco.com. You can get deliveries. You can get discounts if you use the NCFB promo code. Really good people doing a great job over there. But now let's get back to the dark side.
Dark side. Is there music here?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's where the thunder and the hail come from, like we mentioned earlier today. I mean, I got to think, there's dark sides in all kitchens. We have people calling out because they just don't want to come to work.
Right.
There are people that call out because they got a DUI last night. They get people that don't call out because they're in jail from the night before, and we just don't know what happened to them. Are they even still alive? I mean, this is just normal stuff that we're dealing with in a restaurant with people that may or may not be going through crisis. So I've got to know, how do you deal with it? I assume you've had to remove people from the program because they fall outside the lines of your structure. So, and this isn't meant to be gossipy. I just want to know, how do you deal with these situations?
Sure. Yeah, it's not without heartache. The thing that I think Sarah's our program director, she and I struggle most with is, how do we do the most good? And the most good doesn't mean it's always good. There are a lot of folks that we talk to that we're either not in a position to add another employee, or they're not in a position to be hired by us, or they've been with us and they can't seem to get our culture, which is really important.
Right.
And, it creates, to keep with the restaurant analogy, some significant heartburn. We have folks that dip, like I said earlier, dip back into crisis. We've got folks that go back to abusive people and are still in employment and that risk their employment because they don't come to work or they've been beaten the night before. And those are not things you take lightly as an employer. It's not things you take lightly as someone who is trying to elevate their status in society. And so, yes, we've had to ask people not to be with us anymore. We've got to say, you're not ready for this kind of work. You're not ready to grow. And I think as Carrols Kitchen is learning, the way we bring folks into employment has changed a little bit how we manage folks who are already in employment.
Yeah.
I think so. I've been with Carrols Kitchen now for 2 years, and our hiring and assessment process has helped me feel better about, because, that's the beginning of the relationship, and it's easier to say no in the beginning because we know what we're able to do. I can't hire someone who's living under a bridge, who hasn't had a job in 10 years, who has mental illness, that's unmedicated. Those are things I can't give them a knife and ask them to work during the busiest part of the day. It's not safe.
Yeah.
And we've had scenarios that aren't safe.
Yeah.
We've had people slam doors and hold knives, and you get in these scenarios and you're like, this is not what I thought Wednesday would look like.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt, just anecdotally, this is going back to, I don't even remember, Matt, if you were still on the team or if you had even, you had to have been already hired at Cafe Del Rey. But do you remember the scenario of me breaking up Irish and Jay with a knife in the kitchen?
I don't know if I was there, but I've heard the story many times.
I mean, this guy,
legendary.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a guy that had been working at Commander's Palace in New Orleans, arguably one of the greatest restaurants in New Orleans and around the country. Came to work for us. A lot of attitude, a lot of cockiness because of where he had been.
Sure. And
he's talking to a guy on the line that had told us that he was a member of the Yakuza, which is a Japanese, mafia, and really tough people you do not want to mess with. And they're just talking trash like two dudes would be talking trash. And it led to, he's waiting for his food to come up. He's waiting. He's like, hey, man, how much longer on this fish? He's like, it's done when it's done. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then made some reference to his mom. And the guy just jumped from around the line with his chef knife in hand and pushed the server against a wall and put the knife right on his throat. And I happened to just be walking in with dirty plates, busting a table. Yeah. And I was the AGM or wine director or whatever at the time, and just went, oh God, and ran over and had to grab Jay and pull him across. Yeah. It was the first time I actually had to let a person go because I was 27 and I just brand new as a manager. Yeah. And it's just holy crap, man. We had to settle them down, sent them both home separately. Yeah. We had to kind of watch them so that someone didn't attack another person later. And then the next day, of course, let people go. And I'm looking at, now I think about it, I think the guy from Commanders is as old as I am now today. And I watched him cry in his chair as across from me in the desk as I let him go because he realized that he had, kind of messed up and took it too far. And not that it's his fault that somebody threw a knife on him, but you also shouldn't put somebody in a situation where they feel like that needs to happen. Sure. Oh, the restaurant industry, man.
And the thing is people ask me these kinds of questions all the time, is there a dark side? And I'm like, dude, the dark side is deep. This is everyone we hire has come from something that's hard, right? All of us, we all come from hard things. And what I think makes us a little different is that we want to tell the truth about those things and say, hey, we acknowledge that a lot of hard things have happened. You're coming from hard stuff. And we want to value whatever that's left on you. But when you come here, we need you to handle us with respect and care the way we want to handle you. So we don't have a lot of blow up episodes. We've had, especially as we've created, more structure inside of our kitchen because we have had to do that. Yeah. When you're hiring folks that don't necessarily have training, when they've never maybe done this before, we've had to create. I joke with my team, I want us to have the best sandwiches in town, and that is primarily important to us, but also primarily important on the other side of that coin is that we have the most encouraging culture around inside of our kitchen, and that's not true of a lot of kitchens. Kitchens are stressful. Our kitchen is still stressful, but it needs to be, we need to handle each other with great care, and we rarely, I haven't had a problem with any of my professional staff, and that, is something that's a really high value for us. They know that's a problem. And our women that are coming out of crisis know that we have standards. And that it's more reasonable to say, I need a break right now than it is to lose it in the kitchen. Now, we've had people lose it in the kitchen. But
well, also, there's a dark side, but there's a light side because you guys have opened up a second location, so you must be doing something right, and you're even staffing more women and more full-time employees as well. Yeah. So
that's been a wild ride. The food hall location, the food hall's been a wild ride. We're grateful to be a part of it. We're learning a lot. If I'm honest, the food hall location for us, it opened last August, so we're 8 months in?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And we are learning that for a training organization like we are, it's really challenging to split up our staff. What we feel like happens here is that we send our brightest, most hopeful staff over there, which means they don't get nearly the management attention that they could have. And so we're sort of wrestling through that, trying to figure out how we staff that better and still make money and do that whole thing.
Right. But you're able to employ more people also.
That's right. That's right. When we first opened, we hired, I think we hired 5 more. And to be just transparent, it was a disaster.
Okay.
We overstaffed in a way with underskilled employees. And so we had to come back and go, wait, hang on. How do we, this return on investment, how do we really still do this business part of this? It's not just all mission, it's still business here. And so we got that under wraps. And so we still have 7. We initially had 12. We still have 7, and we only had 5 when we first started, when we were just at the one location. But our catering has grown tremendously also.
Oh, that's right. You have the catering
aspect. The catering business, and we would love to do every breakfast, lunch, and dinner you want around.
Do you have I know you probably can't name names, but success stories of women that have come through Carrols Kitchen and now have gone on to work in other restaurants?
Yeah. We are really proud that in the 3 years that we've been hiring, we've worked with 20 women total. We've employed 20 women. And that's a full-time employment scenario. In 2018, we had 9. Is that right? Yeah, 9. And one of those women, she's actually still with us. She's in a leadership role with us now. When she came, she'd just gotten out of prison. She didn't have her license because she had so many fines. She had thousands of dollars in fines. She was working at Burger King. Mm-hmm. And when we met her, she was living in a transitional home. When we met her, we just felt like something was different about her. She had also had a passive addiction, so she'd spent time in prison for actually white-collar crimes, but because of addiction. And there was just something different about her. We thought, she really might have all the things that takes for success. And today, she has her license. She has custody of her daughter. She has partial custody of her grandchildren. She has paid off all of her fines. In fact, 80% of her fines were dismissed because of her just turning her life around. Yeah. And she will own her home with Habitat for Humanity by the end of the month. So, I have chills telling you. It's the kind of thing that you go. Now, Carrols Kitchen didn't do this for her, but Carrols Kitchen created stability for her to continue to take steps around getting her life back together.
It's part of the equation.
That's right. It's part of it. Yeah. And so there are, there are stories like that feel like gold standard stories that you're like, we want all of those, but most of our women don't have a license when they come. Most of our women have tremendous fines, and we are just looking for successes everywhere. I sat down with a donor who's a big donor. They've given us a lot of money, and I said, what do you want to know about the success? Like, what does success look like for us? Because we're essentially measuring our fruit on someone else's tree. We want to measure success by their success, kind of thing. And she said, I want to know when everybody gets a license. I want to know when somebody has secure housing. I want to know when their custody comes back. Those things like that. And Sarah and I looked at our list and we thought, well, we have wins everywhere. They're not always gold standard stories, but there are wins across that board all the time. Yeah. And that's created because they've taken another step of stability with employment.
And maybe this is a question that should have been asked at the top, but now we're getting close to the end. Who is Carrol? It's not. It's a last name.
That's right.
And why did the Carrols get involved in this industry?
I get asked, almost every week, are you Carrol?
I've been one of those people asking that question.
So the Carrol family was actually influential during the Spanish flu back in the 1800s. And they were a benevolent family who basically opened up their resources and said, we want to help the people around us, and we don't know that this will have any end to good, but how can we help? And when Carrols Kitchen was in its inception, you know how the restaurant game goes. You look for a location until one pans out. Mm-hmm. And one of the buildings that we got very, 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 very close to was a Carrol building. And the story was inspiring to us. We thought, that's what we're doing. We're really trying to turn this story inside out and say what we have in resources and in community and in relationships, we want to turn over to the have-nots. Yeah. And so that's sort of where the story began with Carrols.
I love the story, and I can't help but think this falls under the culinary world, but this is a exemplary story that relates to anywhere in business, and it makes me think of Max, I don't know if you remember, but what Vivian Howard said on our pre-Thrive interview with her, that she said, I asked her, what's one thing that you want people to take away from Thrive in your demos when they come see it? And she said, we as chefs in the culinary community do this work, and it's great because we are positioned in a way to do this, but it's something that every other business and industry can do.
That's right.
And especially what you're talking about, employing people in crisis, is something that many other businesses can do. So hopefully that's inspiring to them as well.
Yeah. I love my job because I get to sit with folks who care about food and talk about great food, and that's a really fun thing to talk about. Or I get to talk about people with great heart and talk about changing their community. And those two things, I never tire of either of those two things. And something that I love being able to engage our community on is that this kind of employment is just about relationships. And if you can make eye contact and care about where someone else is coming from, you're built for it, which means all humans are built for it. And so I think that we have the opportunity to extend second and third chances all over the place.
Yeah.
Because we're created for relationship, and that's what Carrols Kitchen. We just exist to create a world of dignity and purpose, and that happens through employment with us.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you love good food because we have some good food for you.
Yeah. Before you head out and get back to slinging those sandwiches and helping out the community, we're going to help you and maybe even share with your team a delicious baked good from Bestow Baked Goods, currently in Fuquay Varina, but quickly opening up in Holly Springs, right next to Triangle Wine Company, actually.
What a beautiful cake!
Yeah, so
oh my goodness.
Heather and Kyle Sutton of Bestow Baked Goods, but Heather, as the actual baker, put together this exact cake. Matt, what are the
chocolate
flavors on
espresso cream filling, I believe.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Do I have to take it back to the restaurant?
No, you can do it. It's your cake.
I'm
it is.
kidding.
Thank you for.
They will
might
love
hear that you had this cake and then didn't share.
You're like, what's up? Why didn't I get a piece?
But what a treat!
Yeah, it's thanks to Bestow Baked Goods for providing this for each guest that comes on the show.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. That's great.
Obviously, on our show notes, you can get a link to bestowbakedgoods.com. You can get them. They're at 128 South Fuquay Avenue in Fuquay Varina. But look for the new store coming up soon.
It's good timing during the day. It's noon. This is excellent.
That's right.
Lindsay, thank you so much for coming in. Any parting notes? We want to go to carrolskitchen.org. That's right.
And just the only thing to add is that we've got 2 locations right now, and we want to do a lot of corporate catering. So the more promotion we can get of that, the better.
Yeah, what a great corporate responsibility thing to get your catering.
And it's not, again, charity food. It's great food. Yeah. Check us out.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Well, you heard it here. Everybody go to Carrols Kitchen. Go to carrolskitchen.org. You will eat and drink extremely merrily.
Thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. By rating us online, you're helping others to discover our show. The magic of SEO puts the wind beneath our wings. Follow us on all platforms at NCFB Pod.